Okay. You're recording, right?
It's, yeah, being recorded and
Okay.
broadcast for the audience. Looks like we are just waiting for committee member Woolley. I just sent an email, but CAC Chair Choi, I will leave it up to you anytime after 7:30 when you want to call the meeting to order. Just say the word. You have the floor.
Yep, let's have a roll call, Lizzie.
Awesome. Vice Chair Chen.
Present.
Committee member Larson. Committee member Merchant.
Present.
Committee member Peterson.
Here.
Committee member Woolley.
Here.
Chair Choi.
Here.
Awesome.
Now, if anyone has any questions about the minutes for last month, they can bring it up. And if not, we could have a motion to approve the minutes for today.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Chen.
Yes. Aye.
Committee member, either way. Committee member Larson.
Yes.
Committee member Merchant.
Yes.
Committee member Peterson.
Yes.
Committee member Woolley.
Yes.
Chair Choi.
Aye.
I have want to make a little comment. I wanted to compliment you on the minutes this time. They seemed a bit more robust and fleshed out, and it wasn't lost on me. I really appreciate that. Great job.
Can't say I did anything different, but they were longer. I noticed that when I was finishing up on Friday, it was like, oh my God, 5 pages of minutes.
Yeah, it looked like there was more detail to me than normal. So anyway, it was great minutes.
Okay, I've recorded the motion.
Now, if anyone from the public has any comments on something that's not on the agenda, they can speak up now.
Don't see any members of the public with their hand raised.
Okay, can we move on to announcements?
Yes. Let me share my screen. Sorry, it's always tricky with Zoom to remember where I put things. Here we go. Quick set of announcements this evening, but we'll roll right into them. First is the sustainability events and resources. We have been actively promoting the DriveCleanBayArea.org organization that's organizing group buys for electric vehicles and also hosting webinars accessible through DriveCleanBayArea.org to promote both EV adoption, switching from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles. And they also have a webinar coming out in the coming weeks for folks who have purchased an electric vehicle but now are feeling a little lost with what to do with it, or just want some tips and tricks about how to be the best EV driver out there. There's webinars for those as well. So I encourage everyone to spread the word about DriveCleanBayArea.org. Check it out yourself. And whether or not you own an EV, there's something for you on their webpage. The next is, I just got news today of a new webinar hosted by Ends and Stems, which is a local, I believe it's a meal prep organization. The webinar is co-hosted by Ends and Stems, Stop Waste, and also Community Climate Solutions, which we'll learn a little bit more about this evening, but Community Climate Solutions is the organization that kind of serves as the mother for everyone's jurisdiction specific platform. Like in Albany, we have Carbon Free Albany. In Fremont, they have the Fremont Green Challenge. Community Climate Solutions is the nonprofit that builds all these member specific or jurisdiction specific platforms. So this webinar is going to focus on how to create quick, healthy meals in which little food waste is generated, and with framing the conversation in terms of both saving money, saving resources, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the kitchen. So I was very excited to hear that this webinar is going on, and this chef is a local celebrity. So please spread the word about this webinar or plan to attend yourself. The link is down here, and then you'll also see throughout all our social media pages and in the e-news, we'll be promoting the registration link. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Next announcement, actually I will pass the mic to Eric Larson, sorry, committee member Larson, who was with us on the committee previously, took a brief recess and has now joined us. So committee member Larson, if you want to give a brief introduction about who you are, why you joined the committee.
All right, thanks. Well, I'm very happy to be here with all of you on the Climate Action Committee. I've been living in Albany for 25 years. I am a product marketing manager by day in the medical devices scientific research community, and have raised my family here in Albany. 2 kids have gone through the Albany school system and are in and out of college now, but they're here living at home with us this COVID year. So that's been actually pretty fun. I got involved in Climate Action Committee because I've really wanted to be involved in environmental nonprofits for a number of years. I was with a group called NorCal Solar for quite a number of years, and on the board and president, and working with that group to promote solar energy in the Bay Area and nationally. Got really involved with that. And then we kind of went through this phase of almost like, solar energy became so widely adopted and so accepted here, we kind of started losing the focus of what the group was about. And so I started feeling like I wanted to branch out into other areas, and I started getting really interested in climate change. And I did the climate reality training, the Al Gore organization. And so I've done series of talks for community groups on the climate reality. And I wanted to get more involved in local action. And so I heard about the Sustainability Climate Action Committee and applied for it, and was on the Climate Action Committee for the last 3 years, I think, and really enjoyed my time. It's interesting to learn how small town or any town politics works, and how that whole thing is. It's very different than the business world. It's different than even a nonprofit setting. So, but I've very enjoyed my time. Really feel like we're working on some really interesting stuff here in Albany and have a great opportunity. So I'm really happy to be back on the committee. Peggy McQuaid's first choice found that she had a conflict of interest, I guess, with this committee, or a personal. I didn't get the details, but anyway, she ended up not being able to serve. And so I've known Peggy for a number of years, and so she contacted me and see if I was interested in getting back on the committee. So I was happy enough to accept her appointment, and really happy to be working with you. It's so fun to have new faces and new ideas coming in. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years of working with you all.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And Chair Choi, I believe that concludes our announcements.
Yep, and we don't have any presentations for today. So next up is item 6-1, which is a potential recommendation for council endorsement of the Climate Center's Climate Safe California campaign.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Choi. And at this time, I'd like to introduce everyone to Ellie Cohen. Ellie is here to present to us at Committee Member Peterson's request the Climate Safe California campaign from the Climate Center. And the action before the committee tonight is to receive the presentation, ask questions of Ms. Cohen, then open it up to public comment to see if there are any comments on this item, and then during the discussion decide if the committee would like to make a motion to recommend that the Albany City Council consider endorsing the Climate Safe California campaign. So with that, thank you for joining us, Ellie, and I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you, and great to meet you all. I am a fellow commissioner in San Anselmo, and similar to the story that we just heard from Member Larson, I also many years ago participated in the Al Gore training, actually the second one in January of 2007,
Wow.
and it was amazing,
Yeah.
and haven't stopped since. And I also decided to become active in my town to learn more about, I would do a lot of public speaking about climate change and solutions, but it's another thing to actually try to implement it in your own community. So I've learned quite a bit as well. So anyway, I'm really grateful to all of you for the time and effort that you put into making a difference in Albany. It really does matter. So let me share my screen. And I have a presentation here. Can everybody see this okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'll take maybe 12 or 15 minutes to present, and then would love questions or answers, or if you, does that sound okay? All right, well, let's get into it. So before I start, I should just say the Climate Center was founded in 2001 out of Santa Rosa. And I think in the early years, it was really focused on making sure that every city and the county itself had measurable climate greenhouse gas reduction goals. It was really the first county in the country to have every city and the county committed to that. And they were recognized with some national awards for that. And then in the last 10 years, the main focus had been on really accelerating the growth of community choice energy. So it's, locally government managed electricity as opposed to investor-owned utility electricity like PG&E. And we played a role in establishing the first one here in Marin Clean Energy. And the second one in Sonoma County would not have happened without the Climate Center. And then we played a leadership role in the remarkable growth. There are 23 CCAs today across the state that serves 88% greenhouse gas free electricity to 11 million Californians, a quarter of the state. And so it's a great example of our mission, which is speed and scale greenhouse gas reduction. Now, I worked at a group called Point Blue Conservation Science for 20 years. It was founded as Point Reyes Bird Observatory. And during my time there, we saw the impacts of climate change on bird populations and habitats. And I helped to shift the focus of the organization to broader beyond bird and ecosystem monitoring to really include what we call climate smart conservation. And in my last couple of years there, I was very proud of all the incredible work we had done and the growth of the organization, but I really wanted to work more on that nexus between science and policy. And the woman who founded the Climate Center, Ann Hancock, recruited me to come there. And I've been here a year and a half now. And what we decided to do is to focus on California and to develop this campaign that we call Climate Safe California to move up goals 15 years. 2045 is too late. To wait to 2045 to get to carbon neutrality and net negative emissions just won't work based on where the physics and the biology and the reality of climate change today. So what I'm going to do is share a little bit of the recent science, talk some about various policies and our proposals for California, and hope that you will be excited as we are to move this forward. So you all probably remember where you were on that very creepy orange sky day in early September. I sure remember that. And the LA Times headline that Sunday really captured it. California's climate apocalypse. The calamity is no longer in the future. It's here now. One of the big challenges is that current climate goals really are inadequate globally and in the state. And most of the countries and jurisdictions that are considered cutting edge are following the recommendations of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 1.5C report, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It came out in October 2018. And they recommended, so this is scientists from all over the world, and the recommendations get filtered through all the policy advisors in all these countries. And so this is incredibly bold. They're saying we have to cut emissions essentially in half by 2030. And we have to begin the removal of upwards of 1,000 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalents, or 1 trillion tons of warming pollutants that we've already put into the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels and the cutting down of forests and destruction of soils and habitat. And that we should get to net zero emissions, where sequestration equals emissions by 2050. It's incredibly bold, but the UN operates by consensus. And so these goals are inherently conservative, and they're not enough when you start looking at what's happened since then. So I'll just share a few things here. The top layer of the ocean is heating up and thickening, and this is driving more drought in places like California, more intense storms in places like the Gulf. It's having severe fisheries impact and ensuring that there's less carbon dioxide being absorbed in the ocean, which is a big problem for us. One of the lead authors is a world-renowned climate scientist, Michael Mann. The impacts of climate change are proving to be worse than we scientists predicted, and it's driving a more vicious cycle of warming. Abrupt permafrost thaw doubles the previous estimates of carbon dioxide and methane emissions from the permafrost. The woman who is the lead author of this study said this isn't even incorporated into that 1.5C report modeling. And she said, how realistic are our projections without permafrost feedbacks? We can definitely stave off the worst consequences if we act in the next decade. And there's another study that came out a few weeks ago that shows that they call them thermokarst lakes. They're lakes that are frozen in the permafrost soil. And these scientists were up there in 2018 and 2019, and they saw that the wall of the lakes had spilled out as the permafrost melted. But as the water spilled out, it accelerated the melt of the permafrost. They didn't think anything like that would happen until the end of this century, and they're seeing it now. Another study from about a year ago shows that 9 of 15 global tipping points are underway, including what I was just talking about with the permafrost melting, but Greenland melting much faster, the West Antarctic ice sheet, the drying out of the Amazon. And all this is connected to the slowing down of the Atlantic current, which brings warm water and moderates the temperature in Europe. And they identified these tipping points, I guess it was like 11 or 12 years ago. And they weren't expecting that they would see this until 2040, 2050. And of course, we're seeing it now. And the lead authors on that are saying, we will see a domino effect here. We can still reverse it, but we have to act really soon in a major way. 2 other studies have shown that we will pass this 1.5C dangerous threshold of warming much sooner, 10 years earlier, actually, than the UN IPCC 1.5 report. And here in California, one of the lead authors is this Professor V. Ramanathan from Scripps Institute. We had a call with him a couple months ago. He has a new study coming out. It hasn't come out yet. And he says that California will pass the 1.5C threshold sometime between 2027 and 2035. He thinks it could be on the earlier end. So that means it's as early as 2027. It's 6 years away. So what does that mean? He says that it could mean that essentially most of the crops that we grow in California won't be able to be grown if we don't change what we're doing right now. I mean, it's here, it's now, it's not off in the distant future. And of course, we already are now in a global warming induced severe mega drought. I should just remind you, you all probably know this, that the 20th century in California was probably the wettest on record. We have like 1,200 years of records of weather patterns based on cores from lakes or tree rings. And we went from maybe 2 million people to 40 million people in California during a time that was an anomaly. And our normal pattern is to have these decades in a row of drought, but they would be moderate drought. Instead, with climate change on top of this, it's a severe mega drought. And it does threaten this Dust Bowl economy. But we can make a difference. I want to emphasize that because it's all based on how we decide we want to manage the land and how we want to manage our fossil fuel pollution. And we can turn it around if we start acting now. And there are other impacts, of course, increasing health impacts, especially to the vulnerable communities, which are lower income, almost always communities of color. The fossil study came out last week from Harvard showing that air pollution from fossil fuels is responsible for 1 in 5 deaths globally. You would think that that is enough to make us change our ways and get rid of this fossil fuel economy as quickly as possible. But, and the 2020 smoke storm, there was an analysis done. So we know that 32 people died directly from the fires in 2020, the really unprecedented fire in terms of scope and scale. And Stanford did an analysis, and they estimate that as many as 3,000 additional people died over 65 from breathing that polluted air. We had smoke in the air across the whole state for about 3 weeks. So there are huge consequences that we aren't usually counting. And of course, that's just during fire season. There are 7 million Californians that live within 1 mile of oil or gas wells. And it really is a form of environmental racism. California is the 7th largest oil producing and 3rd largest refining state in the nation. The Western States Petroleum Association is the most powerful corporate lobby in California. California, that's seen by the world as a leader on climate change, the biggest lobby is the oil lobby. And they spent almost $9 million in 2019 alone. And we have tens of thousands of active and idle oil and gas wells that are leaking carcinogens all the time. And then there's the cost in terms of dollars. A new study came out last week from Energy Innovation showing, again, there's multiple studies that shows that it's much more expensive to delay than to invest now. That climate action really, the delay of climate action costs trillions nationally, and it really will bankrupt our economy, and that we need to think about investing sooner. For the first time in December, the Federal Reserve has announced that banks have to consider climate risks. There was an analysis of the 2018 wildfires that destroyed Paradise, and they showed that the total cost was $150 billion. A third of that was the direct footprint of the fire. A third of it was health costs far beyond the footprint. And a third was costs down the supply chain in the economy beyond California's borders. It's enormous. Just to put in perspective, California's annual budget is around $220 billion right now. So it's 2/3 of the budget is just the fire. And this fire was less than half the size of the 2020 fire. So we really have to start thinking how we're going to put a lot more money into climate solutions soon, because it will cost much less. And that was the result of this study. Much less today investing big time than waiting till 2030 to invest. And there are all sorts of studies showing how billions invested in clean jobs and the green economy can generate hundreds of thousands of jobs. And we know that investing in clean energy generates more than twice the jobs as in fossil fuels. The case is pretty strong. Johann Rockström, who is also a world-renowned climate scientist from Germany, said that we have underestimated the risks of unleashing irreversible changes. We are seeing strong evidence already for declaring a state of planetary emergency. The next decade is our window, with consequences for all future generations. And one last study, this just came out in January. Paul Ehrlich and 16 other renowned scientists around the world, they concluded that humanity is causing a rapid loss of biodiversity. And just remember, we need healthy ecosystems just as much as we have to cut emissions. We need healthy ecosystems, basically regulate climate. And so when we have healthy ecosystems, we can regulate climate better. And when the ecosystems are destroyed, it just exacerbates the problems of climate change. So humanity is causing a rapid loss of biodiversity, and with it, Earth's ability to support complex life. But the mainstream is having difficulty grasping the magnitude of this loss, despite the steady erosion of the fabric of human civilization. That's quite powerful. The scientists are yelling to the policymakers, do something. We know the climate reality is outpacing outdated science and policy. Fortunately, some leaders are now stepping up. So Governor Newsom on September 11th, 2 days after that Orange Sky Day, announced that we are in a climate emergency. He said our goals are inadequate. We have to fast track our goals. We have to evaluate them across the board. That was very exciting. He did announce 2 executive orders in the weeks that followed. One that said that we will no longer sell gas-powered vehicles after 2035, and we will protect 30% of our land and waters by 2030, including a focus on sequestration on natural working lands. Sounds great, but really the market would take us there by 2035, in my opinion. And the truth is that California has fallen behind. There are new international and national climate targets that are ahead of California. European Union in December agreed to cut greenhouse gas emissions below 1990 levels by 55% by 2030. Anybody know what California's goals are? 40%. So our current law is that we need to get to 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. European Union's way ahead of us. The United Kingdom, under conservative leader Boris Johnson, committed in December to cutting greenhouse gas emissions to 68% below 1990 levels by 2030, and to get to 100% zero emission vehicle sales by 2030, not 2035. Finland, much smaller country, smaller economy, has committed to getting to net zero emissions by 2035 without offsets. And even Rhode Island is committed to 100% greenhouse gas free electricity by 2030. In California, it's 2045. It's just too late. President Biden now, they're calling for 100% greenhouse gas free electricity nationally by 2035, with 40% of the investments going to climate solutions directed to lower income communities. And I won't go into the details of the other, but just to say, California is behind. We used to be a leader and we really have fallen behind in a big way. Yet the country and the world looks to California, really, as goes California, goes the world. And when we lead, you could think of California as the pilot project or the demonstration project for the country. And we need to regain that leadership and show what works. We do know that bold targets work. And so in 2002, we had the greenhouse gas emissions reduction law related to vehicle tailpipes. Within a few years, 13 other states adopted it. And by 2010, it was part of the National Clean Car Standards. In 2017, when Trump announced that he was pulling the United States out of the Paris Accord, California launched the Under 2 Coalition with a state in Germany. Today, there are 220 governmental jurisdictions that include 1.3 billion people and 43% of the world economy that are part of this effort to stay under 2C warming. It's powerful. Started with California. And of course, even though Governor Newsom's executive order on ZEV car sales is not enough, in our opinion, 4 months later, General Motors announces it will only sell zero emission vehicle cars as of 2035. So we do know that bold targets get others to take action. They send market signals. They send societal signals for change. So we need more aggressive policies and accelerated timelines now. Our Climate Safe California vision is that by 2025, we will have enacted the bold policies required by science to dramatically cut emissions, start drawdown at scale, and secure resilient communities by 2030, inspiring global action. We have 3 key principles that guide all of our policies and programs. They have to be based on the latest science. They have to ensure a just transition for those fossil fuel workers and their families and their communities that are dependent on fossil fuel industries. We don't want to leave anybody behind. And I should tell you, there are about 40,000 workers directly in fossil fuels and another 100,000 indirectly. It's huge, and we need to have a pathway for them to show how they can still take care of their families, but not have to be part of the fossil fuel past. And third, we have to prioritize climate justice, which we see as racial justice, to ensure that lower income communities and BIPOC communities are no longer disproportionately harmed by fossil fuels and climate change, and that these communities have equitable access to climate-friendly solutions. So another way of looking at what we want to do, this red bar is our 1990 baseline. So here's zero emissions. This is the estimated emissions for 1990, 431 million metric tons. We were celebrating that we reached our 2020 target early to get to below 1990 levels. Here it is, 425, but as you can see, it is below, but we still have a long ways to go here. Here's our current law, 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. What we think we need to get to is some combination of this. This blue is showing 80% below 1990 levels, or 86 million metric tons of emissions annually. And this is what we'd like to get to by 2030. And this is showing 100 million metric tons sequestered, additional sequestration on natural and working lands from a major investment. We've had an analysis done. It won't be cheap. We estimate 29 billion, or about 3 billion a year over 10 years. But you think about the 150 billion 1 year of fires cost, and then it's cheap It's like, hey, that's a good deal to save our future. Let's do it. And when you invest in sequestration and healthy soils and healthy habitat, you get all kinds of other benefits, like holding more water in the soil and replenishing groundwater and supporting biodiversity and food security and jobs. And if we did this, it would help us be more resilient to climate change and reduce the impacts. And we would begin to get to what we call net negative emissions, where sequestration is greater than emissions. And that's this little blue bar here where you start showing the negative. This is minus 14 million metric tons. So that's our vision of where we want to go. Another way of showing is just based on our current laws. This is from Governor Brown's executive order in 2018. We want to move that up from 2045 to 2030. 80% below 1990 levels was first proposed by Schwarzenegger in 2005 to happen by 2050. We need that to happen much sooner. And nature-based annual sequestration was actually part of Governor Brown's net negative emissions executive order. And so what are the kinds of policies that are required to get there? We need huge changes, obviously, to phase out fossil fuel development, production, and use in transportation, electrifying buildings, in electricity, and in industry. We need to scale up nature-based sequestration, as I described. We need to invest in a big way in community resilience. No matter what we do, even if we cut all of our emissions today, we still have a climate system that has been greatly disturbed by human activity, and we are going to feel the impacts of it for some time into the future. We have to invest in community resilience. We need to prioritize lower income communities especially. One of the things that we're very active in at the Climate Center is working on community energy resilience, we call it, clean energy microgrids and backup storage. With a coalition that we organize, including energy justice leaders across the state. Just a couple weeks ago, the California Public Utilities Commission agreed to allocate $200 million for microgrids in low-income communities. And so we're very excited about that, except for one thing. The money is allocated strictly to the investor-owned utilities. And our goal was to get it allocated to the community so they could decide for themselves how to do the clean energy microgrids for themselves. We're still now working on legislation to try to change how that money is allocated, but we're proud that at least it's moving in the right direction. And last, the fourth leg of this stool is we have to find a way to fund this. And we know that we need much more than just 12 to 20 billion a year, actually, but that's from the whole economy. So we think that our back of the envelope analysis is that the state needs to put in 12 to 20 billion a year. We're probably investing something like 2 billion a year right now. We have to do more and then leverage much more from the private sector. So bottom line is the suite of solutions and technologies exist today for us to enact right now to reverse the climate crisis, and starting here in California. With Climate Safe California, we are moving forward. We have over 900 endorsements to date, building support. We have, over 50 electeds, scientists and economists, 60, actually I think it's 69 businesses, and 81 NGOs today, and the faith community. Over the past few months, we've met with, at the state level, we've met with 31 assembly members and state senators presenting what I'm sharing with you, mostly to get our climate leaders, our climate champions at the state level to understand how quickly things are changing on climate change, and that it's just, we don't have the luxury to go slow. We need to accelerate our timelines and accelerate climate action. We have a core group of partners that work with us on this, and many other nonprofits that are supporting this. So we hope that the City of Albany will endorse Climate Safe California. You can also each do it as individuals. You can go to climatesafeca.org. We'd love to have you on there. And really, it's a pledge of support for California to accelerate aggressive climate policy. And we know when we do that, we will inspire other states and countries to greater action for a climate safe Earth. We have a resolution that you can use, and it's available on our website, or I can email it to you. And I'll send you a copy of this presentation that has a number of whereases that highlight some of the science I've shared with you today. And it asks for that city or county or whichever the jurisdiction is to endorse the overall concept of Climate Safe California, and to send a letter from the jurisdiction to the governor and to your state senators and assembly members to ask them to accelerate climate action. Our house is on fire, literally. We have to ask at every level of government and society, are we doing enough? And if we do everything we know we need to do, this is our headline for December 2030. California is the first state to reach net negative emissions, kickstarting the nation and the world into equitable climate action. Thank you so much. I did want to mention that we do have a webinar series, and another one's coming up on Tuesday, and you can check them out at our website at theclimatecenter.org/webinars. And there have been some really superb ones. The last one had over 500 people sign up for it from across the state. So we invite you to sit in on some, or you can see the recordings on our website. So thank you for your time. Questions, thoughts?
We'll start with questions and then we can go into discussion.
Yes. Okay.
I'll just jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much. And sort of at my request that you're making this presentation. One thing I wanted to ask is, as Albany has what we think is, for us, a pretty aggressive plan. Of course, it's synced to the current state, but we find it very challenging. We're very small, and it's difficult for us to even find funds. But my take on this is that that's why we need to endorse this, is we really need state level power of finances behind this. Would you say that most localities, that's what we're doing? I mean, we don't want to adjust our own personal plan to this level of acceleration. I don't think, we're having difficulty just even accomplishing what we've put on our plate. So I think
Yes.
part of, is that something you're recommending to local governments,
my belief, thank you, it's a great question. My belief is that we need action at every level of society, from the personal to local government to state government to national and international. Unfortunately, it's only at the federal level that money can be made. So the federal government has this unique ability. So for example, with COVID, as horrifying and destructive and just terrible that it's been, with so many deaths and many others impacted in all sorts of ways, there are some silver linings from a climate change point of view, I believe. And one is that we see that government can act in a very big way very quickly when the political will is there. So we can spend trillions on solving COVID. And we also could actually create a vaccine in 1 year when people thought it couldn't be done for 5 years or 10 years. So we know that things can happen when the political will is there. It's much harder at the local level. We can't make money. We don't print money. There are some of the cities in California that have been really successful at raising money. Santa Monica has, San Luis Obispo has a very aggressive plan. I know Petaluma just passed a very aggressive plan. Very exciting. I know that the Sonoma County, the RCPA, the Regional Climate Protection Authority, their goal is to get to carbon neutrality by 2030. It's huge. They can't really do it by themselves, but again, sometimes setting bold goals just pushes others to action. And I think that one of the reasons we want local towns to pass Climate Safe California is for the towns to contact their elected representatives in Sacramento and to formally say, we need you to do this. We need you to bring more resources to us so that we can do what is appropriate in terms of climate friendly actions. So I think you're right on in that statement. There are some towns that have figured out ways to raise money with small fees that accumulate over time. Sometimes they do rebates and fee bates. There's different ways of doing it. But I can tell you in San Anselmo, we've also struggled with money issues. One of the things that we've done is to cooperate with 2 other towns near us. And we want to have a shared position of a sustainability coordinator like Lizzie. And we can take advantage of grant monies that might be available. So at least we can find some money sources that we might not otherwise. But I'll stop there with that. But it's a great point. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Committee Member Woolley, you have your hand up.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for coming in. I really enjoyed your presentation and hearing that somebody with some influence is pushing a very bold and aggressive agenda at the state level. So thank you for spearheading that effort. I have two questions. Well, I guess three. Lizzie, one of them is actually for you. And the first two questions are, how did you arrive at $12 to $20 billion annually at the state level? Like, what was the modeling that went into that?
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you would want to leverage private sector funding, and I wonder how you would make that happen, how you would sort of coerce the private sector players to play along here.
Okay.
And then Lindsay, my question for you was, if we were to endorse this, is there something else that we would need to do to communicate our endorsement higher up the chain of command to Sacramento?
I can quickly clarify that part first, if that's okay, Ellie. And
yeah,
then
sure.
Craft your response. And Jeff, feel free to jump in here, but the Climate Action Committee wouldn't actually be endorsing this on its own. Like Ellie mentioned, you're free to endorse it as individuals, but what the Climate Action Committee tonight would be doing is recommending that the Albany City Council formally endorse this, because they, as the representative body of Albany, are the ones that have the authority to make those recommendations. And actually, Ellie, you might know better too how that endorsement gets up to the state.
Yeah, so I'll send you that link to, or the resolution itself, if you don't have it already. And we did add to it at the end of the resolution, says in addition to endorsing Climate Safe California, that jurisdiction is committing to sending a letter saying that this jurisdiction supports and endorses Climate Safe California, and asking whoever the state senator is and the state assembly person to actively lead on accelerating climate action timelines in the state, and also to the governor as well. So, does it actually change policy in and of itself? No, but if we get dozens of cities across California to be directing this to their electeds, then it starts to put a different kind of pressure on, and they really do listen to the local governments. So then your other questions. So the 12 to 20 billion originally came from an estimate that was from the UK about the need to spend about 5% of the budget in, and that's what it came from originally. And so it's just roughly 5% of 200 billion to 220 billion. And it really, that was the initial impetus. Since then, we've talked to a number of economists and presented those numbers to them in a really general way. And everybody said that makes sense. There are other analyses now, like one of the ones that I referred to in my presentation tonight, that shows, maybe it's more in the realm of 40-some billion a year, but then that is also when it's leveraging private sector money. So that comes to your second question, how does that really happen? It can happen in a lot of different ways. One way, so we do a lot of work, not just legislative work, but regulatory work at the California Energy Commission and the CPUC. The CPUC right now essentially prohibits local governments from, or any entity actually, from selling clean electricity to somebody else. There's so many rules. It so much favors the investor-owned utilities like PG&E. So in other words, my house is on a north-facing slope. We don't get enough sun for us to have solar. I buy 100% deep green from Marin Clean Energy. So I'm excited that, I pay for 100% clean electrons, right? But my neighbor across the street has solar. I should be able to he should be able to sell me his excess solar, and he's not allowed to. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to basically change the regulations so that it opens up the market. And we used to say unleash market forces, but then a certain administration that just left Washington, D.C. showed that unleashing market forces could be very bad for anything that we care about. So now we say channel market forces. So we want to open up the market, but we want to do it in a way that is climate friendly and ecologically friendly and socially appropriate. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Really inspiring. That's great. I caught little nuances of the Al Gore talk in there, so that's What is your mode of operation? You showed the list of Congress people, state senators, state representatives, groups that you talk to. Do you educate? Do you propose legislation? Do you lobby? What kind of modes of operation do you do?
A great question. All of the above. So our theory of change, if you will, is that we believe that that policy unlocks change. But to change policy, you have to mobilize people across multiple sectors. So our goal, we're doing two things at once. We're really mobilizing across all kinds of sectors in California: climate activists, business, environmental justice, environmental, labor, local government, just to say some of them, health community. And a lot of these organizations work on climate change some of the time, but none of these groups is working on, there's no one that we know of. Actually, we had decided when we started this campaign, if somebody else was already working on accelerating the 2030 targets, that we would join them. And none of them are. Part of it is the people who've been in Sacramento for a long time are a little burned out. It's very hard. I talked about the influence of the oil and gas lobby, but it's not just that. It's also unions that represent some of the oil and gas workers that are very powerful in Sacramento. And so it's challenging, but we know we need to get a lot of people speaking out. So we are mobilizing people to put pressure on targeted elected officials at the same time as we actually wrote 3 pieces of legislation this year. One has already been introduced called SB 99, which is about getting community energy resilience and putting it into the hands of local communities to establish microgrids, clean energy microgrids and battery backup. Again, prioritizing low-income communities first. The other 2 bills were really these big target bills that no member was ready to take on yet. But because we put it out there, we do have a couple members who are looking at, and we'll know actually by Friday, who are looking at a bill that would require the California Air Resources Board to assess what it would take for us to get to 55% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% below 1990 levels by 2030. So it's a start, not enough. We always want more. And we know we're influencing some of these members. And with the Biden administration, they're all starting to find their spines again. It's like, oh, if the president is doing that, well, maybe we could do more here. So we're working on legislation, regulation. And I have to say, on that September 9th Orange Sky Day, we actually, by 4:00 that afternoon, we're presenting a version of what I just shared with you to the top political advisor to the governor. And by Friday morning, the governor had this press conference announcing a climate emergency and that we had to accelerate all the goals. He's backtracked since then, but we know that he was basically repeating what we had said to this political advisor 2 days before. Wow. So, and I'm sure others asked for it, but we were at the right place at the right time. And then the next week, we drafted a comprehensive executive order that was much more aggressive than the 2 that we've seen, but it brought everything together into one giant executive order. And we hope that he'll continue doing it. So there is also the possibility of putting more pressure just on the governor. So there's legislative, there's regulatory, but there is also that executive action. And Jerry Brown was great at doing that. Like there were problems, but he was much more aggressive as a leader on climate change than Governor Newsom. And we really need to light a fire under the governor and make sure that he knows that he can't kowtow to oil and gas, that it's in the interest of all of us, all of his constituents, to really act in a bold way on climate.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So I know a lot of things got sidelined and bent different ways with the COVID challenge, but it also seems you have people that are desperate for employment and industry stepping in, doing things. Does what you're presenting sort of address that? I know you've talked about getting labor on board. Is there an opportunity now that has a limited window as things come back online to not go back, or is that more at the federal level? and the
Oh,
state?
I think there's an opportunity at the state and local level as well. So I think that we'll be getting, and a lot of folks at the state level are anticipating that we will get significant new funds into the state for COVID relief, but it will be a version of green COVID relief, and that we can use this to jumpstart some of the programs that really are needed to address climate change, to address jobs issues, clean, climate friendly jobs at the same time. So I think there's huge opportunity. One of the things that we asked and still do actually to some of those who work around the governor is, if we were to get whatever amount of money, $100 billion allocated just to California from the Biden administration for green COVID relief, are we actually ready to spend it? And do we have the policies in place to make the best use of it? Maybe that's to your question there. And I think to some extent we do, but I think many of our leaders in the state are not used to thinking of the biggest possibilities. They've constrained their thinking, and we can help them think bigger, and we should. And one part of that money absolutely needs to go to those union workers who are in oil and gas. And I think whatever we pay them, it will be worth it, because every bill on climate change in the last couple of years has been shut down by them. It's unbelievable. And it's not because they don't see the writing on the wall. They do, they know what's going on, but their number one goal is to protect the salaries and income and, benefits of their people. And we have to help show them you can protect your people in a different way, but we're going to have to pay for it and help pay for it anyway to make that happen. I should say just one other thing, just to say that we also work in partnership with partners all across the state. We're a pretty small organization. We're 18 or 19 right now. We're hiring 4 or 5 other positions. Our goal really is to leverage the strengths of all of our partners and to find that common ground and work together towards these big goals. We support our partners and other things that they're doing, and they're supporting us. So that's a key part of our strategy. We also are we are a policy nonprofit, so we write white papers, and we just had an op-ed published last week in Cal Matters, which is a online journal that targets really the folks in Sacramento on sequestration. So we have a number of different strategies that we put together to be successful here.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll just say, if there are no other questions, we do have a member of the public with their hand raised. Are there any other final questions before we open up to public comment? Not? Jeremiah, you are allowed to talk.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, members, chair. Just to let you know, I'm a longshoreman at the Port of Oakland and Port of Richmond and Port of San Francisco. And this whole climate change, all these oil unions and all these things, I'm a longshoreman, so we're not oil workers, but we sure work around it. And that's what supplies the economy. And when I heard about this oil spill in the Bay earlier this week, in Richmond, all that oil, you see, the thing they don't tell you is what kind of oil. And I'm not 100% sure, but there's this thing called bunker fuel, and it's raw mineral fossil fuel that's unrefined, that comes straight out of the earth. And that's what these ships use to fuel their engines. I mean, it's the worst of the worst fuel. It's unrefined, but Richmond, they refine the oil and make petroleum and gasoline. Just what a mess, right? So, I mean, I just can't wait till we get rid of all this oil and bunker fuel and harmful chemicals that are killing our environments, our ecological systems, and our atmosphere. So, I mean, I wish we could go solar. Everybody has renewable energy, renewable sustainability, using the tide to generate electricity, because the tide goes up and down. But yeah, if we could push, the state and federal and national to make some huge policies to where, they eliminate our fossil fuels, I think it would be a really good thing. And presenting this to council is the best thing we can do. And, if I was on city council, I would make a motion to pass this for sure. It's the only right thing to do. So keep up the good work, everybody. And I think if we all stick together as a team and support each other, we can make some great things happen in these next few years for the future of, the world and everybody who lives on it, the trees, the plants, and all the animals. So let's not give up yet. Let's keep going. We got a good pace going here. Keep up the good work, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jeremiah. There are no other members of the public with their hand raised. So at this point, again, the staff recommendation or the next step would be for the committee to discuss whether they'd like to endorse it, and if so, a motion would be made to recommend, sorry, taking back what I just said. The next step would be the committee would make a motion to recommend that the Albany City Council consider endorsing the Climate Safe California campaign. Committee Member Peterson?
So a question of how that goes. Would we have to come up with the wording of the endorsement, or could we use what Ellie's organization provides, or is that something that the council themselves would have staff put together for them?
Staff could put together a resolution. So the committee would just be making a motion to recommend that the Albany City Council endorse the campaign, and then
so
get in the materials.
So the other question I have is, does staff have any concern? And I see this as part of our role of making sure that as a city, we do lobbying action that is beneficial from a climate emergency point of view. So that's why I'm going to recommend to folks that we do make a motion to have the city council endorse this. But it is more accelerated than our plan. So it's not, we need to be clear with the city council. I get a little concerned. Some of the members will say, well, we already have a climate action adaptation plan. Why are we endorsing this? It's more accelerated. I think the response to that, and if anyone has that concern in the committee right now, is that we really need to go faster. As a city alone, the best we can do is probably our current plan, because we thought about it a lot. So we need to lobby our state government for more, and through the state doing that, also the federal government. So we'll probably come up with even more recommendations to city council to endorse things, to the federal government, to other, just reach out more to the higher levels of government. It's just amazing how things come down from leadership. If we get the highest levels going the right way, we can accomplish so much more than we can as just a little tiny community.
I think your question, we can clarify with the council that this isn't amending our climate action plan. They're simply endorsing this Climate Safe California campaign, which will message to the state that there needs to be more state action coming down.
Yep.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns with conflicting with our climate action plan. I think that, like you said, like Ellie said, leveraging our voice to a bigger recommendation to the state is a powerful way to influence that while we go about working on our own local climate action plan. So, yeah.
I'd just like to also mention, part of my motivation of bringing Ellie here, I've done a lot of work at home and going to webinars that the Climate Center has put on that have been just really excellent. And I think linking forces with groups that are doing this is just a natural for us to do. I think we really need to reach out and I think that'll be a good measure for us. The other thing is, I think this would part of presenting the, will we have the opportunity when we present to the city council to have Ellie give her presentation on what the initiative, what the Climate Safe California campaign is about, because I think this information going direct to the council members would be very powerful.
Jeff, I'm not sure what our limitations there are.
I think we would certainly recommend that. A lot depends on the council's workload, and if they have time in their agenda for a full presentation, we would recommend that to the city manager. It'd be Nicole's decision ultimately. If we needed to abbreviate the presentation, we'd work with Ellie on that, and certainly attach the full presentation and a link to this or other maybe other things that the council members should watch before the meeting so they get the whole picture. But we would do our best in terms of community development department staff. We would do our best to make sure that there's an opportunity for a full presentation.
Great, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Does any, I was going to make a motion, but I want to make sure all the other members have had a chance to talk. Okay, well, I make a motion that the committee recommend that the city council endorse the Climate Safe California campaign as presented by the Climate Center, and follow the recommendations of the endorsing information that also be sent on to the governor and our representatives at the state level.
I will go ahead and second that motion.
Great. I'll go through a roll call vote. Vice Chair Chen.
Aye.
Committee Member Larson.
Aye.
Committee Member Merchant.
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson.
Aye.
Committee Member Woolley.
Yes.
Chair Choi.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ellie, for joining us.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And I can do a shorter presentation if it's needed, or I'm happy to give the slides to one of you to do whatever you would like. So I'll leave now, but thank you all for your great work and all of your service and dedication. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Take care.
See ya.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Next up.
Got in.
Okay.
Thanks, Nick, for bringing in that idea.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have item 6-2, which is just an update on the carbon-free Albany engagement plan.
Yes. Okay. So I'll start this. I'm going to try to make this pretty brief, and I'll note that this is something that we can bring back for future discussion as well. It's not time sensitive, so just keep that in mind. But I'll start off this evening with a brief demonstration of the Carbon-Free Albany tool, as I know that many members of the committee are new and were not around when this committee actually recommended that the city council develop a platform, the Carbon-Free Albany platform. So I just will provide a brief bit of background and then give you some updates on engagement efforts and opportunities. So Carbon-Free Albany is the City of Albany's community climate solutions platform. And as I mentioned or alluded to earlier in the meeting, Community Climate Solution is a nonprofit developed by a woman based in Palo Alto, California. She saw that her community, there were a lot of folks in her community who were really energized about stopping the climate crisis and getting on board, but they just didn't really know how to take individual action, or that individual action had such a meaningful impact. So her response was to develop the nonprofit Community Climate Solutions, and through Community Climate Solutions, they developed a Palo Alto specific web page. I believe it's called the I don't want to misrepresent it, but there's a platform dedicated to Palo Alto. And as that platform started gaining momentum, she realized that she could, share this technology with other communities in the Bay Area. And now it has spread from coast to coast, spanning all the way from cities in Hawaii to cities in Maine, with a bunch of cities in between having had developed these platforms, including in Albany with our Carbon Free Albany platform, and the URL is carbonfreealbany.org. The platform allows households or individual users to make an account and join in on the challenge to bring Albany to carbon neutrality. Currently, we have 142 households signed up with a goal of, I have not updated it, I apologize, but when the Climate Action Committee last discussed this, the informally recommended goal was 500 households by December 2020, with 100 tons of CO2 removed by December 2021. So you can see here in our progress bars where we're at. Unfortunately, we've had less engagement with the platform than we originally anticipated and would hope for. So that's why we're discussing tonight opportunities to advance that. And you can see different community groups that have kind of formed groups within the platform. Anyone belonging to that group, any action that they take to reduce their tons of CO2 then brings them up on the community leaderboard. So Albany Climate Action Coalition is currently at the top. And so what you can do once you make a account is you can actually calculate the carbon footprint of your household based on the back end. We have a bunch of Albany specific metrics that help provide not a perfectly accurate, but a pretty accurate representation of what the individual household produces in terms of CO2 annually. Then what households can do is they can go to this actions page and they can find actions that fit their household and fit their goals for removing CO2 or reducing tons of CO2 used annually. So the actions, they range from big actions like installing electric heat pumps to smaller actions such as eating, not smaller, but less time and money intensive, I would say, such as eating lower down the food chain, or talking about solutions with friends and neighbors. And I think what's really unique about this platform and a great resource for us is folks can toggle up here around what their budget is to see actions that fit their budget, what kind of difficulty level they are, ranging from challenging, such as installing heat pumps, to easy, such as talking about solutions. There's also a toggle here where someone can decide or indicate whether they are renters or homeowners to help find actions that are specific to renter friendly versus homeowner friendly. And then one page, we have a few paragraphs here. If you click the Why Join button on the platform main page, it takes you to these 3 paragraphs that talk about why it's important for the city of Albany to engage in the global fight against global climate change. So that's a brief demonstration of the platform. And now I have a couple slides to share. However, I've lost my slides. Here we go. My apologies. Go. Right. So as I mentioned, the goals of the platform are to increase public awareness of the importance and effectiveness of household actions and individual action to reduce greenhouse gases, to increase engagement with this platform so that users know what resources are available to them to reduce their individual carbon footprints, and also to track achieved measures so that we have an idea of at the household level what kind of greenhouse gas reductions we're seeing as they relate to our climate action plan goals. Then we have proposed participation goals, as I mentioned, of 500 total households by December 2021. We currently have 142, so we have some work to do. And we're also hoping to have 5 to 10 new team leaders and teams actively participating and engaging with new participants to join the platform by December 2021. I will note that, also, sorry, I want to reset this. Can everyone see my, sorry. Does everyone see these slides? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Having a couple technical difficulties over here. Our strategies to do this is we wanted to get the word more out on social media through our different channels such as Nextdoor, Instagram, Facebook, and also our weekly e-news. We also want to incorporate promotion of the Carbon Free Albany platform into community events, as we know, which will mostly be virtual at this point. We would also love to see more community volunteers who, whether or not they're, folks who are already involved with the city of Albany or not, we would love to have volunteers who are dedicated to engaging their communities and their friends and their neighbors, people they go to school with, people they work with in the Carbon Free Albany Challenge. And then we'd like to do outreach to community groups and schools. One thing that can be challenging about that is it does take a lot of work. So as we mentioned, it would be great if we could develop a team of leaders who really take it on as their mission to increase usership and spread the word about Carbon Free Albany platform and community climate solutions in general. I know it's not just Albany that is having this challenge. So the Community Climate Solutions staff are now offering monthly calls with Community Climate Solutions staff and other team leaders and volunteers in communities, again, from Hawaii to Maine, working on these platforms. It'll be the first Tuesday of every month at 5:00 p.m. via Zoom. This is one of those things that will probably be Zoom forever, given that it's with folks from so many different areas. And the goal really is to connect ambitious leaders with the resources to drive engagement with their platforms. So my recommendation this evening would be, if the committee felt that this was something they wanted to do, they could form an outreach and engagement subcommittee to assist with Carbon Free Albany outreach, and then designate either all members of the subcommittee or one member of the subcommittee each month to attend these outreach calls with Community Climate Solutions staff to hear what other communities are doing, and then bring it back to the subcommittee and to the committee as needed to discuss opportunities to increase engagement. And one thing I'll just share quickly before we move into questions and discussion, I think there is a lot of opportunity to engage our community in climate action broadly through this platform, because as we saw on the actions page, there are actions that range from very challenging to very easy. And while we all know we need everyone to electrify, we need everyone to drive electric, we need everyone to live more sustainable lives, we also, I think, have to recognize that we have to meet folks where they are at this time. And we can't get everyone to swap out their heater tomorrow or everyone to swap out their vehicle, but we can get people to start talking to their friends and neighbors about small actions they're taking and how to build from those actions to really make sure we achieve a carbon-free Albany. So that's why I see that an outreach and engagement subcommittee could focus on many different facets of climate action within their subcommittee, but through the Carbon Free Albany platform, I see a lot of opportunity. So with that, I will pass the mic back to Sarah if you want to open it up to questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, we can have a discussion. Committee member Peterson.
Yeah, so just a background on this. Lizzie, thanks a lot. That was a really good overview. When I first joined the climate, it was the sustainability committee. This was like almost 4 years ago now. That was my main reason for coming here, was I just felt, you go to the city webpage and there should be something right away where it goes, what you can do about climate action. And so we talked about how would we develop this, and while we were doing all these discussions and thinking of all the effort and labor it would take to develop a portal on the web page, and the web page was in transition at that time, so it was even like, oh, don't do anything more yet. They're going to roll out the new one. All of a sudden, up came Community Climate Solutions, and it was fantastic. I mean, what we get for bang for the buck is great. And I had envisioned, yeah, people will just jump on this because it's great. It's what I was looking for. But it's been a real challenge getting this out. So one question I have, and maybe Jeff can speak to this also, is that, and this was something that I brought up with the city council when we were passing the new climate action and adaptation plan. All this stuff takes a lot of effort and time to make sure it works and to put the effort into, doing the PR and, all this stuff. It takes an immense amount of work. And I really think this platform is the city's main platform for getting into what you can do as for climate action. There's some more informational stuff. Certainly the climate action and adaptation plan is a nice information, but this is the one that tells you what you can do, and we can add specific things and updates and make it very vibrant and interactive. So it seems like the city should have should have a person that really engages with this, goes to the Tuesday meeting. And I'm not trying to blow this off as we should, I'm more than happy to volunteer and have people in the committee do it. But I'm getting this sense that the city is not being, and I don't understand the budgets and everything. I know the budgets are tight, but I'm going to be always pushing on the city government and the city manager that they need to have serious funding and staff time devoted to these issues because they're critical. This is, the residents and people in Albany are very serious about us doing things, and it seems like having this platform around for a couple years and we put goals on and barely get 10% in. Now, I went around, I'm really happy to see that Community Climate Solutions is addressing this with these monthly seminars. San Jose has a 0.01% penetration with their page based on how many households there are per the population of the city. I think Fremont has something less. At 2%, Albany is actually doing kind of good. Palo Alto is a little bit more up there, but it seems like if we need to, if we're saying this is the primary platform for people to get involved and do action and get information, it has to be a real effort all around, including on staff. And if that means a staff person that goes out and does a lot of work and puts on a lot, I know with COVID, we can't really talk about visiting schools and visiting parent groups and doing all that kind of stuff, but it's something that needs that kind of attention. So is that possible, or is there a way to, I know it's Lizzie and Michelle works a bit, but it seems like we used to have more like a full-time Civic Spark person. Is there a way that we can get, or should we be looking at funding to dedicate to this? So it just seems like it needs more oomph rather than just limping along the way it is.
I can speak to that, Jeff, unless you want to.
Go ahead, Lizzie. Go ahead and get started. If I have anything to add, I'll jump in.
Okay. Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. It does require a lot of time to get these platforms off the ground and spread the word. I think having a full-time staff person dedicated to it sounds good, but one thing we've also found, and that Community Climate Solutions has found in other jurisdictions as well, is sometimes if it's just the city telling folks over and over and over what to do, when to do it, how much money to spend on it, it actually doesn't really take off because it's just seen as the city telling someone what to do versus someone's friend or their neighbor or their family member saying, hey, I joined this platform and I pledge to eat meatless Mondays for the rest of the month. They say that it's that community member to community member engagement that's more meaningful versus staff members saying, hey, you in this household do this. So while some cities do have staff members dedicated I haven't heard of a staff or a city that has a full-time staff person dedicated to this because it's hard to fund those positions.
Yeah.
They
I
do.
wasn't saying necessarily full-time. I mean, just more than just you.
Yeah, totally. And we have had Bianca Hutner, our previous Civic Spark Fellow last year. She worked pretty extensively on increasing usership of this platform. And when I was a Civic Spark Fellow, I also dedicated a few hours a week to increasing usership. And it just never really took off because I think it was seen as the city of Albany is presenting at this community group meeting and they're telling you to do this versus a member of the community group really being passionate about how it applies to what they're doing and how it relates to the mission of the community group and saying, this is why we should sign up. And yeah, Bianca worked extensively on increasing usership. And I think I put in the memo how many households signed up, but it just, I think demonstrates that real momentum from within the community, I think will help us spread the word more so than just dedicating more staff time to it. It's just my take. Eric or Committee Member Larson?
If we do a subcommittee, would the subcommittee be able to interact with the public to organize such a sort of super group in the community? And so would that be within the scope of the subcommittee?
I think that would be fine as long as the meetings are open to the public with a clear scope of what you're talking about, which would be spreading the word about carbon-free Albany. And
I'm thinking about in terms of, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say, just make sure the subcommittee isn't more than 3 CAC members with another CAC member coming to the meeting.
Right. I guess I was envisioning, would the subcommittee be helping organize those community groups to do the talks? Is that part of the scope of what you're contemplating?
I mean, I'm up to whatever the subcommittee wants to do. I don't want to direct the subcommittee's work plan, but I can see that the subcommittee could either be a group of individuals that host a meeting to promote it, or the subcommittee could spread the word within their own communities to gather volunteers and try to, fueling the fire sounds like the wrong thing to say at a CAC meeting, but I guess I'm at a loss for what other cliche phrase to use. But I think it's totally up to subcommittee what they want to do. I do think that dedicating one member of the subcommittee on a rotating basis, or someone who wants to go every time to go to these meetings, kind of establishes, it ensures that someone will every month be representing the city of Albany at these monthly calls. And yeah, I see the subcommittee as making sure that that foundation is there. Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea. I mean, we certainly, need to move this along. And I when we get to the work plan and start looking at that, I actually am suggesting that there be more focus on outreach. So I would think the outreach this could be their first, well, again, we don't want to make ad hoc committees that are around for a long time, but it seems like the issue of outreach continues to be a big challenge for just getting the word out and the urgency of the word out. So do we need to make a motion to make a subcommittee, or can we just agree?
I think you do have to make a motion to establish a subcommittee.
Okay, I make a motion we establish a subcommittee for outreach and promoting climate, what is it called? Climate carbon-free Albany platform. Well, doesn't look like we're getting a second. Looks like you have.
Ram has his hand up. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just waiting for somebody. Yeah, so Lizzie, I remember I sent you an email last month suggesting, probably independently of what you had already planned, exactly this kind of thing. And so before I second the motion, I wanted to ask a question about, like, are there are subcommittees composed of like co-equal members, or is there like a chair of a subcommittee?
I think you're welcome to designate a chair if you would like to. I think it can be informal. I've sat in on a few subcommittees with both Committee Member Peterson and Committee Member Larson, and feel free to jump in, but we never designated a chair because it was never really necessary.
Yeah, my comment is I think the idea is to make it much more informal and loose form, and we're not, it's, you know, we don't want to violate the Brown Act, but we're not tied to the Brown Act as long as there's less than a
Much more of a working group.
Less.
yeah, there's no quorum there, so you know, you're free from, you don't have to do all that kind of organizational stuff. So the idea is to just give people a little freedom to brainstorm and get out there and do some things, and then come back and report on it to the committee. And if there's something further that we want to then push on to the city council or suggest policy or something, we do that.
Sure. Yeah, with all that in mind, I will second Committee Member Peterson's motion to establish a committee on community outreach.
Great. Before we do a roll call vote, I will just see, we do have one member of the public in the audience. See if there's a public comment, and then we can come back for the vote. I do not see a hand raised, so last call. All right, back to the committee. At this time, if there are no further comments, we can do the motion. Are there any further comments or discussion though before we do that?
Just a quick, I'm assuming afterwards we'll ask for a couple volunteers to staff this or to join up on it, or
I think we could do that before we do the motion, just to make sure there are members interested before we establish it, and then we can. Okay, so I will call out. I've seen a hand from Committee Member Larson. Any other volunteer? Committee Member Woolley, Committee Member Merchant, Committee Member Peterson, just confirming that that's a thumbs up and not a hand.
Yeah, that's a thumbs up.
Okay, cool. All right.
And this is not a lifetime commitment. So if in the course of our work over the next couple of years, you want to switch around subcommittees, that's just fine too.
Yeah, well, that brings, so that's why I made it a little more specific to the Carbon-Free Albany platform. I know we've had this talk that if we have subcommittees around, then they start to look like standing subcommittees and they're around for a long time. Then that starts to become a violation of Brown Act. So these have to be ad hoc for limited periods of time with a very specific goal, right? Is that correct?
I think what you could do is establish this subcommittee, and we could check in 6 months and then after a year to make sure that the scope of the subcommittee is still desirable to the committee, and go from there. Great. I will now do a roll call vote. Establishing the subcommittee to promote Carbon-Free Albany, the subcommittee consisting of Committee Member Larson, Committee Member Merchant, and Committee Member Woolley. Vice Chair Chen?
Aye.
Committee Member Larson?
Aye.
Committee Member Merchant?
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson?
Aye.
Committee Member Woolley?
Aye.
Chair Choi?
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Thank you all. Oh, Sarah.
Okay. Okay, next up we have item 6-3, which is
Can I,
the climate, or 2021 to 23. Oh, yeah.
can I ask one quick question? Just to, since we're not going to meet for another month, how do we start getting in touch with the Monday meetings? Will you send us an email, or how do you want to connect?
Yeah, I will send you all an email so you have each other's email addresses with the information for how to join that monthly call.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
look out
then-
for that probably tomorrow.
And then we can arrange subcommittee meetings on our own, just for you two to know that we can do that.
And if you need us to set it up in Zoom, if you don't have your own Zoom accounts, we can set that up for you.
Great. Back to you, Sarah.
Okay, we have the Climate Action Committee work plan for 2021 to 23.
So I'll make a brief presentation on this, and I'll start by noting that to be mindful of the time, it's almost 9 o'clock. So I think this is the start of a discussion. I don't want the committee to feel pressured to complete it. And normally, committees, as they talk about their work plans for the next couple of years, might need 2 or 3 meetings, and that's just fine. So I provided you a brief memo about the work plan process, and I'll go over that just briefly to refresh your memory. The idea of this is that it is an opportunity for the committee to think about what's important to you. You would then present this to the city council at a meeting sometime in the near future, probably late spring. And the city council, sometimes they take it just as is and they say, great, go ahead. Other times they'll provide very specific direction, but you get that opportunity for feedback. So it would be good to have one or more of you plan to attend the meeting, or all of you can attend and speak to it. But usually have one of you, at least one of you, make a presentation to the city council on the work plan and to share with them kind of the nature of the deliberations. We as staff people are there as well, but we're mindful of the fact that this is the committee's work plan, not our work plan. So it's nice to have one or more of you to make that presentation. It's in place for 2 years. There's a pretty simple process. If something comes up in the course of 2 years where you want to shift priorities around, the general practice is that you go back to the city council to ask for their support for making an adjustment or usually adding something to the work plan. This year, normally the city council would do their strategic planning process first, and some of the big themes that they're thinking about would come out of that, and then you build off of their strategic plan to do your work plan. They're moving a little bit more slowly on that. So you're kind of jumping ahead, and perhaps your work might eventually inform their strategic plan. Who knows? But just so that you have the reference, I think we attached to you with the city council's previous strategic plan from a few years ago. And our expectation is, although the specifics may change, the general themes will probably be the same, even though we do have 3 new council members, so you never know. Committee member Peterson was kind enough to prepare a work plan based on what he thought was important, based on his experience with the committee and these issues, and that's been provided to you. From staff perspective, I would just, this is an important issue, and as you heard from the presentation tonight, there is an enormous amount of urgency, and I don't want to appear to be implying that we don't think it's important, but with any organization kind of focusing priorities and making clear what needs to get done, and in effect limiting or prioritizing what we're trying to accomplish over the next couple of years is important. And from my personal experience, I've seen these work plans evolve from being pretty focused to, in more recent years for different committees, being kind of a laundry list. And sometimes the initiative gets, if there's too many things on there, the focus gets lost and the work plan is a less effective tool. So just sharing that with you. The other thing I did in the staff report is just kind of give you some thoughts about some references to where the city might be most effective. And again, as you heard from the presentation tonight, there's some things we can't do for financial reasons or legal reasons, or just we know that we can't be effective at it and somebody else should lead that. Maybe we support those other people. And then there are some things that we can do. The city has been successful in taking some leadership positions, certainly with Community Choice Energy as an example, we're really proud of what we did early on with that and continuing to do with EBCE. So by focusing in on the things that we can do and setting the groundwork that other larger cities in the region and the state can follow, hopefully we can be very effective and kind of leverage our willingness to experiment on ourselves, if you will. So I think I'll just pause right there. Again, this evening, I don't think you should try to get all the way through it. If you want to just kind of put some ideas out there for us to mold into a draft that you look at next month, that's great. You can also work off of Committee Member Peterson's draft. One way or the other, we'd like to get something kind of more tangible and maybe in a final draft form for you for next month. And then if that can be finished next month or maybe April at the latest, then it goes to City Council, probably a few weeks after that. So I'll pause here to see if you have any questions. If there are any comments from the member of the public that's present, and otherwise just kind of start to give us some, you can brainstorm among yourselves and we'll just try to keep track of some of the themes that emerge out of your discussion. Any questions for me? Yes.
So I had a question. I like, so yeah, we're not supposed to wrap this all up at this meeting. That's great, because it's a lot to sort of think through. So I was going to suggest, or actually, I guess my question is, since we can't communicate with one another and say, hey, what about this idea? I've spent the last week looking through this. How about we do this or that? We can't do that until the next meeting, right? Because if we start doing amongst too many of us, then we violated the Brown Act. So would it make sense, in order to, since we have limited time now and we're not going to stay here for hours mulling through it all, would it make sense either to again make a subcommittee that could then do that kind of work and bring it back to our group? Or can we just say, well, everybody look at this, sort of prioritize your things, or try to consolidate it and add some things that you think are valuable, and then we'll just work it out on the next time we meet?
This is the committee's work plan, so I wouldn't definitively say you should do it one way or the other. The one observation I would make is I want to do the best we can to make sure that all of you feel ownership to it. And sometimes a subcommittee will kind of take a run at something, and in other contexts, it's great that there's just 2 or 3 people that are focused on it, and you all can then, each of you will be involved in your own subcommittees, and you make a lot of progress on different things. But in this case, I will follow the wishes of the committee, but I do think ultimately you all need to feel like it's a part of it is yours individually.
Great, thanks. So I'm gonna, if it's okay, Chair Choi, can I just pose I'm just going to pose a question to the whole committee. So did everyone get a chance, or have people come up? I'm going to assume everyone's reviewed the past work plan, and I did this draft work plan. I'd be more than happy to hear what people thought about it, if there are other things that should be added or whatever.
Before we start discussing that, we just might want to see if the member of the public has a comment before we move into discussion. I do not see a hand raised. So we'll move back to the committee. Now you can discuss Committee Member Peterson's question.
I think this is a really, really great start and helps frame some very concrete things that we could do as a committee. So I'm really grateful to have this as a starting point. The one thought that I had, and it actually ties into the presentation that Ellie gave, is in the presentation she mentioned ensuring equitable access to climate-friendly solutions. And I was just wondering whether we might want to include some sort of idea of how we're going to include equity in whatever policies or frameworks or resources that we come up with. And I don't know if that I don't even know exactly what that solution looks like, whether we're forming a subcommittee to help us understand equitable issues in preparing climate action solutions, or if it's a lens that we develop that we use to apply to any decisions that we're making, just so it's something that we take into consideration as we move forward with a lot of these really great ideas.
I had a question for the group, just in general. I'd love to get an understanding if, because we don't have sort of a high level work plan from the city, I am a member of the committee at large. So I am curious if from discussions with city council members, whether anyone has gotten a sense of what climate priorities that members of the council maybe would like us to focus on.
I can speak to that. That's actually an excellent thing. And since some of you are new on committee, what I did when I was appointed as a member of the committee, I actually set up a monthly meeting with the person who appointed me that was like a couple weeks ahead of, the actual climate action committee meeting, so that we could just find out what's going on, and I could sort of touch bases with them about what's coming up with city council policy and budget policy and everything. So I really encourage everyone. That brings up the question in the case of Member Chen's, can he actually query all the council members, or should he in sort of finding out what their interests are as a member at large? And I think, for Chair Choi, coming from the city council, coming from the district, it's probably, the district and student voices and what their concerns are kind of shaping that.
I can speak to just briefly the legal restrictions on consulting with more than 2 council members and then reporting it back is, if you say I talked to person A, B, and C, and they all agree that this is what they want to do, that probably does constitute a violation of open meeting laws. But you can certainly talk, and Danielle, I think you're in kind of the unique position, but for those of you who have been appointed by a particular council member, certainly great for you to consult with them and maybe one other if you wish. That's certainly not a problem. It's just kind of it's when you communicate what you heard to the rest of the group and you can start to see where the votes are. That's the crossing the line. And it's a pain sometimes. I'm sorry. It would be nice if you could have these conversations and it would be, maybe an easier and richer process, but these laws have been developed to keep backroom deals out of government, and we take them seriously. So yeah, I think you have to be a little bit careful about that and mindful about not only what you hear, but how you communicate it to others. You could certainly say, my guess is maybe this is what the council would want to do. And that might be diluting it enough that it kind of, it might be okay. But if you say, Councilmember Tiedemann said this to me and Councilmember Jordan said this, Councilmember McQuaid said that, then we're over the limit. And I don't have any, and just to follow up on your question, I think it's a really good one also. I don't have a real sense from the staff level yet what their interests are going to be. And I think that will emerge first, well, either from their strategic planning process or when they see your draft work plan. And they may turn it upside down, or they may say, this is great, this is just right in alignment with what they want to do. Well, I don't have any insights to add right now, I'm afraid. I think Committee Member Larson.
Yeah. So I was just gonna make a comment about the work plan in sort of a high level. If you read the 2019 to 21 work plan, a lot of the elements were develop a plan, receive updates, a lot. It was a little, it was developing the plan, and we created the climate action plan, and we got that ratified, and that's a document now that's the living document for Albany. And if you read Nick's document, the way I saw a lot of implement action kind of stuff, and that's what I was really looking for this next term of our Climate Action Committee for the next 2 years, because we're in a great position we have a good, strong climate action plan. Now is the time to start implementing. So I think that I would like to see in our work plan much stronger language about implementing, using the funds of DD for blah, blah, blah. And, to Jeff's point, you don't want to be super specific, but I think we want to use language that's more active and, suggesting to, directing council to implement something like that. So I'd like to see those kind of things. And we've already got the basis for, electrification, zero energy transportation, renters and landlords are certainly high on our list. So I think those are the categories that I'm looking for in the work plan to elaborate on. So, and I think Nick did a great job of really getting a lot of good content in there. And it's a great place to start organizing. But I would just encourage us to, and this is sort of, bringing over, from the past year, the knowledge of it's time to put stronger language about getting city council to implement stuff out of the climate action plan.
I had another question too about when we put together the plan. I mean, part of my thing, I'm very mindful of your comments about, having really a big list and too much that you can do. But first, per the presentation we saw from the Climate Center, from Ellie Cohen, this is really, we're in a really bad situation. We need to push it as hard as we can, and there needs to be more urgency and acceptance of a crisis situation. There's a lot of denial going on. There's a lot of focusing on other issues. There's a lot of, well, that's nice, but we're too small to do it. And I think, at least for myself as a member of this committee, it's my position to push this as hard as possible because it's so urgent. So, part of why I have as much as I did on there. The other thing is some of those can be consolidated and simplified. I think, we could certainly look at how to combine some. The other thing is it's a 2-year plan, and per what we just saw the presentation, a lot has to happen in the next 10 years or the window closes, and then these domino effect tipping point things start becoming more and more severe. Little Albany isn't going to make a difference one way or the other. As one of the former city council members said, it's like spitting in the ocean. It doesn't matter what Albany does, but that's completely the wrong attitude. We need to be rising to the challenge and leading and doing as much as we can. Otherwise, well, it's just what Ellie said. I mean, if we can get our state to move forward and do that. So I think we can. So I'm more erring on the side of having a really robust amount, because I know, and you guys can correct me, we may go to the city council with this plan. Some of the things are politically dangerous, and they may say, no, we don't want you pursuing this. And they may X some of them out, and then we'll get a shrunken list as it is. I also find, Jeff says, yeah, you can always add things in your plan later. Nobody wants to do that later. And then there's a whole month involved. You got to go to the council, and then they, blah, 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 blah. So it's better to have a robust plan. I think maybe it's a little more than you can accomplish, but we're going to have to really push ourselves and do as much as possible in the next 2 years. It's critical to get these things launched. So.
I want to note that we did have a member of the public raise their hand just after we closed public comments. So I'm wondering if we should open that back up briefly. Michelle, let me know when you're ready. Jeremiah?
Oh, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to suggest, I know it's your work plan and everything, and that's very important. The only thing I was just going to try to suggest, if I may, respectfully, climate action, everything's about going green. And, myself, I'm trying to incorporate more community gardens in Albany, and more gardens and more like I guess, green infrastructure. I mean, is there some sort of way that, you know, we could, as a team on this committee, just through my public comment, if some sort of climate action, we can create some sort of, you know, going green infrastructure with Albany. You know, we can just increase the green infrastructure, you know, more gardens. I don't know if, you know, we can encourage the community to, you know, grow your own gardens at home, or we could offer special classes. I'm just not sure if, you know, hopefully maybe you could recommend to council, you know, some more green infrastructure, gardens, or some sort of climate action related somehow to, you know, go green. And go green can mean a lot of things, you know, it's just a color, but going green refers to, you know, no gas powered vehicles. Going green refers to recycling. Going green refers to planting your own garden, harvesting your own fruits and vegetables instead of driving to the supermarket, you know. And going green is kind of a vague topic, but it touches a lot of good quality areas in the community. So if we could just, you know, somehow throw those words in there somewhere, you know, increase, you know, green infrastructure somehow, that'd be great. You know, we could turn the entire Key Route Boulevard into a community garden, that median strip, and have some sort of climate action ways to recycle and reduce your carbon footprint. So yeah, that's just my only suggestion, is somehow to, you know, increase green infrastructure in Albany. Thanks.
Great. There are no more hands raised. So back to the committee.
Nick?
Yeah, so that was an excellent comment from Jeremiah. So we just to also people who weren't in the committee before, when we started a year ago, looking at the just newly, I think it was December of 2019 that the City Council approved the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. We spent a lot of time prioritizing actions that we wanted to focus on because we knew there was just so much there. So the actions we decided would be most effective and important to focus on immediately were building electrification, because of our success with East Bay Community Energy, and that being a good resource that we can leverage off of. And then we call it an EV action plan. Now we're referring it to a zero emissions action plan, zero emission transportation action plan. And then the third one was under green infrastructure, was actually, although gardens are a great idea, and just improving green infrastructure, but the primary one was street trees, public space trees, getting more trees, because trees themselves will do a lot of carbon sequestration. And that certainly, I have reference to that in the plan I suggested. So I just wanted to bring that up. The other thing I did, you know, I was mindful of what Jeff had said about what had been put forward regarding, you know, what I put forward being kind of lengthy. So I did take a pass at shrinking it. I know I can't send that to everybody, but I could share it with everybody now if that's appropriate. I could bring up a more succinct, not as wordy, combined 15-point list, if that's something I can do at this meeting. And that could take us maybe to another step that would make it a little simpler. It also includes some other ideas that folks brainstormed on during the Albany Climate Action Coalition meeting the other night that I added in. So if that makes sense, and I presented in this meeting, could that then be distributed to members of the committee as something that was presented in this meeting?
Well, we'll do whatever the committee wants this evening. It is approaching 9:30, so we could either, you could go into a discussion of it this evening. You can, I think that, you know, we can make that available to all the committee members, and what is good about what you just did is to make a transparent process that you've got this draft. We could post it on the webpage, so it's available to members of the public who might be interested, and then you could discuss it at your next meeting. If that's again, I just want to make sure that all the committee members kind of get a chance to mull this over. And you can decide how late you want to work tonight on this, but it might be 15 items and a number of committee members. That might take some discussion.
Yeah, so my goal was putting something up that would be already taken to the next level of consolidating some things. I realized everybody didn't get to, that was me kind of doing it. People will still have the original one that they can reference, and they can certainly add more stuff that they're interested in. The comments that member Merchant said about social equity and everything can certainly be rolled into this too. If I bring it up now on the screen, it's also recorded in the recording, which people can look at. So if I kind of asking everybody, are you okay with that? Or because what I'm thinking, in interest of time, we're just going to have to let people. I'm going to suggest that we just let people mull at it, come back next time, and then we can comment. But I think this would make it a little simpler for people.
Well, I think there's value in at least getting a start on discussing it and seeing it all together, and having the opportunity to discuss it would be good. And we don't have to come to a conclusion tonight, but yeah.
Well, if it's okay, if I could just show the thing on the screen and you can say, oh, I see what you did. Because what I did was I have the numbers of the original ones, and it shows how it combined them. And it's just another, it might save us some time, but I'll bring it up if everybody's okay with it.
Committee Member Chen, I think, has his hand raised.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, I think first of all, we should probably put a motion to extend the meeting for a little bit, but maybe just as a first pass, it's going to take a couple of meetings to get through the work plan. I'd actually love to just kind of go around the room and get everyone's sort of high level priorities. And maybe that would be a good point to sort of kick off a thought process, and then we could come back and reconvene at the next meeting and make a little more progress. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
I'm seeing a lot of nods, and I agree that we should make a motion to extend the time at this point. We're not going to wrap up in 3 minutes here.
Well, I guess I will make a motion to, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 committee members. So I guess we need at least, let's say, 18 minutes or so. So I'll extend a motion to, put forward a motion to extend the meeting to 9:50.
We do have one more agenda item after this, the introduction.
Oh dear.
To the budgeting.
Yeah. The next agenda item may not be time sensitive. It's not time sensitive from our perspective. So we could always come back to that next meeting if you wish.
I'd second the motion.
Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt? Yeah, I think, well, we had maybe more than one agenda item. Was it the discussion about Measure DD funds? Is that
Yes.
the other one? Yeah, I was hoping to talk about that this month, but that I suppose can wait. And that could also be part of a broader discussion about our work plan, which could happen in a more complete fashion next time we meet. So yeah, I'll second the motion. I think 9:50 should do it, right? Cool.
So to clarify before going into the roll call vote, this motion by Vice Chair Chen, seconded by Committee Member Woolley, is to extend the meeting to 9:50 p.m.
Correct.
Great. So now I will do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Chen?
Aye.
Committee Member Larson?
Aye.
Committee Member Merchant?
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson?
Aye.
Committee Member Woolley?
Aye.
Chair Choi?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Yeah, I guess going back to the work plan, I'd be happy to sort of share a couple of priorities that I drafted, and maybe just put that out there as an idea. And I'm happy to discuss stuff, but I think in the interest of time, it might be better just to sort of get several priorities out there and just have stuff for everyone to kind of like noodle over or think about until the next meeting. So I guess four things that I sort of came up with as priorities, and a lot of these really overlap with the draft work plan that Member Peterson put together. So really thanks a lot for giving us that as like a starting point. I think one big focus was from last year, we sort of had a lot of difficulty in coming up with a decision on the East Bay Community Energy default plan. So I think one high-level priority that we should come up with is just sort of a carbon-free power procurement requirement or standard, just sort of a set of principles that the city can use to make these decisions in a more guided fashion in the future, so that it's not sort of an individual decision that has to occur every time. It's something that is sort of set forth by certain standards or mandates that would help dictate what kind of plan we would work with. The second one I have is to sort of improve the community climate disaster resilience, or to come up with a community climate disaster resilience plan. We've had a number of major climate events that have occurred in the last year, such as the wildfires. And from my perspective, I think the city of Albany isn't in a great position to respond to those. You know, if I had a pacemaker or something, I wouldn't know where to go if my power went out. So I think it's really important for us to like focus on that as a priority. The third one sort of ties into the building electrification program, but in general, there's a lot of multifamily, commercial, and just single family homes in Albany that would benefit from electrification. I think it's important for us to work with nonprofit entities in the Bay Area to either manage a program that helps provide rebates for that, or just sort of has a better sense of how to advance building electrification, sort of in line with our cap. And I guess the final one was to focus on air quality standards in Albany. I think that right now we don't really have a lot of guidance around air quality. And again, it's a major issue that's come up since 2017 every year with wildfires. And I think it's important to take some action to think about air quality. So if I had to pick four priorities, those would be sort of the four priorities I would focus on. And I guess because we're on Zoom, this is a little challenging, but we could either go alphabetically or popcorn style, where I would choose the next person.
I think if you want, I can help facilitate, because I have the roll call votes in front of me. I can help facilitate alphabetical. So next would be Committee Member Larson.
All right. Yeah, as I mentioned, I'd like to see more in our work plan about implementation and taking the climate action plan into action. So I think communication to the community is important to get the word out about what we're trying to do and what the community can and needs to do. To that, not as a action plan item, but I'd like to see if we can help influence getting a staff person at least dedicated to some extent to climate action, an additional staff person, because I've seen so many times over the last couple of years where we want to do stuff, but there's just nobody to do it. And so, Lizzie is fantastic, but you're stretched in so many different ways that, and we don't even have Bianca anymore. So, anyway, just that being part of, I don't know how to work that in the work plan, but to push for that. The zero emission transportation, I think, is a big item for me. Charge station installation for renters using the money from DB to help incentivize, provide rebates, provide communication to landlords and renters especially. Community member Merchant, I like your thoughts about equity, and I think that all ties together because it's interesting. I've been here 25 years, and I really, I know that there's a lot of renters, but I was so shocked when a few years ago when I saw the statistic that over 50% of the population of Albany is renters, and I just that. So I think that putting a big emphasis on helping them transition would be a big part of our plan. And continue with building electrification using, again, the actions and the incentives and the rebates that we can actually implement now to help people get panel upgrades to set the stage for when they have an event to transition to electrification, they can do that. So those are my thoughts and priorities.
Committee Member Merchant.
Yeah, so what I said before about adding the equity lens and discussion to what we're considering. And in addition to that, I think in looking at the list that Nick had put together, I think understanding what our role is versus the role of other committees and commissions within the city to address these issues, because I think some of the things that are within this plan, and I mean, I noticed like planning and zoning comes up, the Community Access Committee, transportation. So if we can kind of be very clear in our work plan around what is within our purview and what is something that we should advocate for other committees and commissions to address. Just so we're not doubling up on work, and we're approaching it most efficiently, and also making a climate agenda a part of the other committees that are working within the city, so that it's part of their priorities as well.
Thank you. Committee Member Peterson.
Yeah, well, mine are probably all down there on paper, but I just want to second, what everybody else has said. I appreciate getting more views on this. This is great. Just a comment. I really also think communication with the community is a really critical aspect. Aggressively getting things out, really giving people information that they can use, and encouraging them to take action. That all needs to be spurred along through partnerships. And the other thing is other advisory committees. That was something I was trying to cover too, and there's reference to some of these other committees. A lot of times they'll be very focused, and there are things that they're working on, but we should make sure every advisory body that is developing policies, make sure that they're in keeping with the goals of the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. So maybe even spending some time going through all the various recommended actions and making nice summaries and getting it to these other committees and saying, make sure this is included and here's some suggestions. A lot of times what will happen is we'll work in our little silos, and then at a rather late date, your ideas will go around to everybody, and all of a sudden the last minute you're going, well, why did they do it this way? This is completely down the wrong path, and so you make your comments and everyone goes, well, thank you, but we're already too far down, and we're not going to do that. So I think getting a little more proactive on getting the climate action and adaptation actions and necessary goals before those committees is an important thing.
Committee Member Woolley.
I don't have all that much to add. It's mostly been said already. I will just state my priorities, which are a subset of the ones that have already been expressed, including a discussion of how funds on Measure DD are going to be spent. And I would like to focus on projects that are very visible to the public, so that they can see the results of the measure that they voted for. Things like urban forestry, new bike paths, things like that. And the other being in a similar vein about community engagement. That is kind of the big thing I'm focusing on right now. Not just with encouraging or trying to encourage, perhaps another type of utility tax increase in another measure later, but on the other hand, also, getting community members to engage with Carbon Free Albany and really take action, and then tell their friends, and then hopefully have something like this spill over into other localities. That's really all I have.
Chair Choi?
Yeah, I just second or third committee members, merchants' thoughts on equity. And another thing I think we should prioritize is, like Nick said, communication between the city and the school board. And I've been sitting in the Environmental Action Plan Committee's meetings, and they're currently drafting a work plan for the district. And I think a lot of their goals are aligned with our goals, or at least geared in the same direction. So I think increasing communication would help with community engagement, and maybe even increase engagement with Carbon Free Albany's platform. Yeah.
Great. That was everyone in alphabetical order with the chair at the end. I don't know if anyone wants to circle back or if we should move on, knowing that we'll come back next month and have another open discussion about the work plan.
I hate to belabor this point. Can I just flash my little thing on the screen, so then if it's a benefit, people can see it? You can actually see this online later. It might help.
You don't have to just flash it. You can put it up.
Okay. Do I have screen share capability?
You should.
Okay.
Yeah, you should.
Now, first I got to get to it. So I think it's here. Oops, I'm going to have to open this up all the way. Social climate action. Oh, phooey, I closed it. Hold on a sec. It's a more recent one. Come on. Wow, it really goes slow when you're on this thing.
Sometimes if you stop screen sharing first and then pull it up.
Yeah, well, I thought it was just right. I just did this today.
Then you won't see your personal.
Plan activities. Yeah, so here it is. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So basically, this is the new number 1 through 15. And then this is, what in the parentheses are what they are. So if I combine two, this is 2 and 3, 4, 19 moved up to here because that was a new one someone came up with, 10. And these are actually in suggested priority order too. So you can see they're much more brief and focused, and they can certainly be a little bit expanded if you want. So there was a, some of these reflect some that people have brought up, and down at the bottom here, I sort of just have a list of what was combined in the order of priority. So that's useful to you. There it is.
Well, thank you to all of you and Committee Member Peterson for that in particular. I think what we can do, if it's okay with the other committee members, is kind of assemble your comments this evening. Maybe if it's okay with other committee members, we'll reach out to Nick specifically and see if we can kind of consolidate so that there's one draft document that you look at next month that incorporates everything combined. It won't be perfect, so there'll be plenty of chances for everybody to weigh in and move things around. And if other thoughts emerge with you over the next few weeks, that's great too. And then maybe we'll have something that's ready for you to make a recommendation on next month, or if not, like I say, it's not unheard of for this to take a few months and to get it right. So like I say, I think that would be our normal work, our normal next steps, if you will, for you to prepare for your next meeting.
Saw a hand from Committee Member Woolley.
Yeah, I had a very unrelated question. If we could wrap up this discussion first.
Is it a question on an item on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Committee member Larson?
Yeah, on this work plan thing. So you're going to consolidate with Nick's comments and city staff work plan ideas. Is it appropriate for us to send in our ideas in writing to you now so that they get included in that? Or how can you be a little bit more specific about the process from
Sure.
now to
So
the next
if
meeting?
if any of you individually want to send something to us, that would be great, and we will hold it as staff. We'll assemble it together. We could either, literally attach your email or whatever, or we could just kind of take your comment and incorporate it into what I'm envisioning is the next draft of this. But yeah, I think it would be just fine for you individually to send it to Lizzie and myself and Michelle, or any one of the three of us, and we'll work on that for your next meeting.
And then that'll come out in advance of the meeting, so we'll have a few days to look at it as usual.
Right.
I'm going to attach it to the agenda packet. Great.
Okay.
Just as a
So
point of procedure, we may want to extend the meeting again. I doubt that we're going to wrap this up in 5 minutes.
so I think we're wrapped up with this particular agenda item, though. If I'm catching the drift here, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Yes.
And again, this was my agenda item that to give you a brief presentation on. I won't dive into it unless you want me to, and if you want to extend the meeting, or if you just have if this committee member, well, if this was the item you had a question about, if you want to just jump right to that, that would be fine too.
First, I'd like to move to extend the meeting another 10 minutes until 10 p.m.
I will second that.
Is that to go through the next agenda item?
Yeah. Well, I had one question about an agenda item, and I think it would take us that long to wrap up anyway.
Right. I just think the city budgeting process deserves a fair amount of. I don't know what you're thinking, Jeff, but I'd like to really hear what you have to say about this, and I don't want to rush it. So
I think extending the meeting will be to cover committee member Woolley's question about this item, but we'll table the discussion and presentation for the next meeting. I also want to check in with committee member Peterson. If you were to provide any subcommittee updates, we would have to keep that in mind too in extending the meeting time, and typically our future agenda items discussion take at least a few minutes as well. So just keep that in mind.
Right. Okay.
For determining the time. Committee member Peterson?
Yeah, I don't have subcommittee updates, at least not for the zero emission transportation. So
okay, we can table that one as well.
That was actually what my question was about.
Oh boy.
Well, there's no updates. That does simplify things a fair amount. I just read the recommendation that we establish membership on the subcommittees, including my joining the subcommittee with member Peterson. And if that was possible to do in 3 minutes, then I would want to cover that as well.
Okay, so you don't have a question about the Measure DD items, so we'll just completely skip over 6-4, move right to 6-5. Okay, so then do we still have a motion by committee member Woolley, seconded by Vice Chair Chen, to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote. Vice Chair Chen?
Aye.
Committee member Larson?
Aye.
Committee member Merchant?
Aye.
Committee member Peterson?
aye.
Committee member Woolley?
Aye.
Chair Choi?
Aye.
Great. To clarify, we've skipped over 6-4 and we were now on 6-5. So committee member Woolley your request is to establish the members of the Zero Emissions Transportation Action Plan.
Yeah.
You would like the committee to be called subcommittee, sorry.
Wait, didn't we already? Oh, the electric vehicle adoption plan, is that what you said? I thought that was an existing subcommittee.
It is. Yes, it's an existing subcommittee. Sorry, I thought you said you wanted to establish who was on it during.
Oh yeah, I wanted to join that committee. We had
Yes.
discussed that last time.
Yes. Committee member Peterson?
Yeah, so actually, I think, you know, and Eric can speak to this, he was on, originally when it was established, it was called the EV or Electric Vehicle Action Plan Subcommittee. And in mulling all this over for months, we finally realized that really it should be the zero emission transportation, which is sort of more the, you know, a more larger category action plan. And what I'm suggesting is that we reform, you know, we can put to bed the EV Action Plan Committee and have a zero emission transportation action committee that would include myself, member Woolley, and member Larson. If Eric is still up for that, I know he just signed up for another subcommittee. So anyway, that's what I'm suggesting.
I'm interested. I want to give other members the chance to join that subcommittee if you want to. I've worked on it for the last year or so. If anybody else wants to do that, new ideas are welcome. And so if member Chen or member Merchant wants to be on that, that's, but I'm also interested.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, we can't have more than 3. So,
Right.
But you can have just 2. You don't have. We don't have to have 3.
If folks
Okay,
want
so I'll be on it if it's open. Yeah.
Great. We do have a member of the public with their hand raised, so at this point we'll move into public comment. Jeremiah.
Thank you. I didn't expect public comment to come so quickly. Kind of sprung it up there on me, but I'm ready for it. That's why I raised my hand. You know, there's a few things, right? Carbon free doesn't always have to be electric. It could just be riding a bike. You know, what happened to all those Lime bikes that we had approved by city council and recommended by, you know, Climate Action? And we had those Lime bikes. Those were wonderful and encouraged the healthier community by riding bicycles. And I know it's winter time, so it's raining and stuff, it's bad weather, but there still are sunny, beautiful days. It's good days to go for a bike ride. So maybe we can work on getting those Lime bikes back. And also, I've noticed these other ones called Revel, REVEL, and they're electric little mopeds. I've seen them up at the North Berkeley BART station because I go to the Berkeley Food Pantry to get some donations for foods for the homeless in Albany. So I'm up there, you know, sometimes a couple of times a week, and I've seen those. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Maybe we could get this Revel. The customer service number is 855-690-9180 for Revel's customer support. So maybe we can reach out to them somehow, and we can get some more alternative modes of transportation, walking, biking, electric, you know, vehicles. So that's just what I wanted to say on that. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great. We're back to the committee for discussion, and at this time I have the proposed motion would be to establish the Zero Emissions Action Plan Subcommittee, or Zero Emissions Transportation Action Plan Subcommittee, consisting of Committee Member Peterson, Committee Member Woolley, Committee Member Larson.
I will make such a motion.
I'll second it.
Great. Vice Chair Chen,
Aye.
Committee Member Larson,
Aye.
Committee Member Merchant,
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson,
Aye.
Committee Member Woolley,
Aye.
Chair Choi.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. Okay. Chair Choi, back to you for call for future agenda items.
Okay. If anyone has any requests for future agenda items, we can talk about it right now.
It's going to be automatic that the skipped one 6-4 is going to be on the agenda, right? So we don't have to sit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think work plan would be the other one that will be automatic.
Okay, great.
That sounds like we kind of have our hands full already.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a hand raised from the public. Jeremiah?
Thank you. I'll be real quick. I'm not sure if it's an entire future agenda item. Maybe more of like a positive suggestion. I'm not sure. Let's say, you know, there's some vehicles that we notice that smog is coming out of the exhaust pipes, or, you know, a motorcycle just with all this smoke coming out. Is there a way in Albany to report, you know, a license plate, or is there a way to report a gross polluting vehicle or something to refer people to some help, like exchange your polluting vehicle for, you know, a hybrid or electric vehicle? Is there some sort of program possibly up for discussion from the state or from the county to where there's some vehicle exchange? You know, you want to go green, you want to get a Tesla or hybrid vehicle, you know, a Chevy Volt or something, or a Leaf, but, you know, you just can't get rid of this old clunker, you know, maybe emotionally attached to it, or, you know, doesn't have a good resale value, but maybe there's some sort of exchange, some sort of incentive for, you know, people to go green in Albany to trade in their car for a, you know, the subcommittee we're just referring to, green transportation, trade in your old car for something green. Thanks.
I'll briefly respond and just encourage Jeremiah to check out the Clean Cars for All program available through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I believe they have a program where you can turn in an old fossil fuel burning vehicle for either a Clipper card with loaded cash value or for financial incentive to purchase an electric vehicle. Any other calls for future agenda items?
Yeah, just a brief one. So I believe next month's meeting is March 17th. So we have maybe 2 more meetings before Earth Day. I guess at one of the next 2 agendas, I know that there was an Earth Day joint virtual celebration with, I believe, I forget the organization, the Watershed Project or something like that in 2020. And I wanted to make sure that that was addressed in one of the next 2 agendas.
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide an update on what we're planning with the Watershed Project. I'll bring that next month.
Thanks. That would be awesome.
If nothing else, Chair Choi, I'll pass it back to you.
Is that okay? Should we adjourn the meeting, or if I call a motion?
No need to call a motion,
Okay.
Just adjourn us.
but you can adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks.